Today, we're going to do a little story time. The rest is still unwritten. But that's actually true. What I wanted to share with you today is how I came to work for the organization called We. So I'm originally from the United States, for those of you that don't know. Grew up in Wyoming, went to university in Utah, graduated, thank you, with a bachelor's degree in communication. And from there, I moved to Phoenix, Arizona, running out into the world thinking, I went to university, I've got a degree, I'll find a job anywhere. Nope. No one cared at all that I had a degree. So I ended up working retail for a year. I worked at Target. I worked at Pottery Barn for a little bit, and then I eventually found a job answering phones at a salon and spa in Phoenix, Arizona, thinking I would just be there for a few months until I found something that was in my field. Well, it turns out I was pretty good at answering the phones and a lot of other things there, and I quickly worked my way up the ladder until I was one of their client operations directors. Now, this job gave me all the things that I was told that I needed. I have an itchy face today, just as an FYI. Now, it gave me all the things that I needed. The North American dream. I had some money. I literally was the first person out of my group of friends to get the Nintendo Wii when it came out. I got an iPod Touch. This is all telling you my age, but that's fine. My best friend and I had a house with the pool in the backyard. Now, we were renting it, but we were the only people in our group of friends that had our own pool in our own backyard. I literally had everything. This is what I grew up learning, that this is what you're supposed to have, is a job and a house, and that was it. And I was living with my best friend, John, which was so fun. But this job, although I liked it and I enjoyed the people that I worked with, it wasn't creating happiness the way that I wanted it to. And it's cliche, and I say this in my speeches a lot, and I mean it. I was looking for a job that not only paid well, but made the world a better place. And for me, this job wasn't fulfilling that need inside of me. But to be honest, I was a little embarrassed to talk about it because I thought, well, did I fail at life? I have all the things that I'm told that I needed, but I'm not happy. So that, well, maybe I'll buy something else that'll make me happy. And Mario Kart was coming out for Nintendo Wii, so I went and bought that, which was awesome. And like for 2 weeks, I was like super happy. But that eventually faded too. And so I thought, well, I guess this is it. You just settle. So for 4 years, I just existed, going through the motions of life, driving to work, getting a paycheck, coming home, and being miserable. But after about 4 years of feeling this way, I'd been talking to a friend and mentor whose name is Reed, who was living in Florida at the time. And he called and invited me to go on a Me to We volunteer trip to Kenya with him to help build a school. And at some point, where I'm going to tell you Reed's story and I'm going to introduce you to him, but today's not that day. But suffice to say, he was a friend. And when he called and said this to me, I literally was like, you're out of your mind. If I can't buy happiness in North America, I'm not going to find it in Kenya. And I hung up the phone. But I couldn't stop thinking about that conversation, and I went home for Christmas that year, because this was December of 2007, almost 10 years ago. And my friends and family were sort of like, you should think about doing this, it might help. So I came back from Christmas and I called my friend and I said, I want to go. And in March of 2008, I went on my first Me to We trip to Kenya. And this is also cliche, but it is the best description I know at this point in time. It was life-changing. I saw the work that We was doing, and you can check them out on our website at we.org. I'm not going to go into what we do. We don't need to key message here today. And I went through all the motions that we do in our Me to We trips, going on a water walk with the mamas, getting to know the Maasai warriors, helping build a school, getting to play with the kids, going on safari. But the moment that changed everything for me is when we arrived at one of the new We schools, and I got out of the car, and literally all of these kids came running, and they circled around me, and they were laughing and giggling and pointing and, talking a mile a minute in language at the time I didn't really understand. And I was nervous because I couldn't see. I was this tiny person, this huge sea of humans. Oh, that's wrong. Huge sea of humans. Thank you. And as I moved, the whole group sort of moved with me. And so this whole group started to follow me around, and they wanted to give me a tour of their classroom. And my friends nicknamed me Madge of the Mara, which Madge is Madonna's nickname, because this is what it must feel like for Madonna to go to the airport. And afterwards, we sat in the grass, and my facilitator, who's now my good friend Robin Wizawati, sat with me, and she said, they want to ask you some questions, and maybe you could tell them a little of your story. And I said, sure. And I told them my whole life story. They asked me every question under the sun, literally like, where did I come from? What school did I go to? Was I a doctor? Was I married? What was my religion? How many kids did I have? What did my parents do? And after I told them everything, I'll never forget a young girl raised her hand and said to me, she didn't know something like this, meaning the loss of my legs, could also happen to white people too. And that phrase stopped me in my tracks. I didn't really know what it meant at the time, but I cried a little bit. And we got in the car, we went back to where we were staying. I journaled about it, and then we came home. And for about a month, I had something called reverse culture shock, where I felt paralyzed. I felt sad that I might never see these people in Kenya again. I felt overwhelmed by the knowledge and the poverty that I saw. I was super enamored by the work that we was doing, and I wanted to get involved in some way, but I didn't know how. And so I went back and I read my journal, and I came across that story. And my friend who had brought me to Kenya always said, you should be a motivational speaker. And I always said, I have nothing to talk about. I'm not just going to tell my story. That seems arrogant. But I realized what that girl said to me when she didn't know something like this, meaning the loss of my legs could happen to white people too, was that if I could help her understand, and I'm only assuming because I haven't ever gotten to talk to her since, I'm assuming when she said that, what she meant was, wow, everybody, no matter where you come from, has some sort of challenge they have to face. And I thought if I can show her that we all have challenges, but some of them can be overcome, what more can I do? So I applied for a job at WE. A few months later, they flew me out for an interview. I was really excited, but I was also super nervous. And I remember sitting in the second floor boardroom of our office, our old office, and Director of Leadership walks in, and then Mark Kilberger walked in. And that's what diarrhea feels like. And I did a 15-minute speech, which I'm sure was complete crap. And basically at the end, Mark said, when can you move here? And then I was so hoping, like a lot of people when they come to the office, that they get to meet Craig Kilberger, who he and his brother Mark are the founders of WE. And he wasn't there, and I was like, oh, I was hoping to meet Craig, just in my head. And then I'm walking back to my hotel where I was staying, and I passed him on the street. But I had one of those moments where I like looked up and was like, oh my gosh, that's him. And I smiled, and I went to say something, but then I panicked, and then I sort of went like, oh. And he just kept walking. And then a few months later, I packed up my life, put it in my parents' basement in Wyoming, which it's still there. Mom and Dad will figure it out, I promise. And I moved to Toronto, where I live now, to be an ambassador of social change for WE. And that concludes our story for today. Thank you for listening. The end. As always, you're my new best friend. Call me every 5 minutes.
Bye. Hope you find your dad.